Right. Public forum. We have one speaker, Pierre.
Globally, last month was the hottest month of September humanity ever experienced. This is the fourth month in a row to break temperature records. Today, we will talk about the systemic danger that we are facing in the midst of the climate crisis. Climate change will not make our civilization collapse through a single dramatic event, but it will keep eroding our societies through many compounding events up to a point of failure. Constant droughts, constant wildfires, constant floods, constant destructive storms, and warming oceans are affecting our food production, our health, and our economies. This, in turn, slowly but surely erodes our democracies. Last month, our region had a taste of what is to come. Twice up already experienced wildfires due to the dry and windy conditions. Winds also caused some damage, but it is the floods that affected us the most this time. Queenstown, Gore, and Southland all declared a state of emergency. Houses had to be evacuated, roads were cut by slips, and Queenstown had to clean up a muddy mess. Today, the water dried, the roads have reopened, and the mud is cleared. But the economic costs are still here. Of course, this event alone will not bankrupt the council, but it doesn't help. And the next crisis is already announced. Hot, dry, and windy weather that will keep the whole country on alert this summer. Probably also a few floods. As you should know, compounding problems can quickly escalate. Due to the lack of funds, the council has kept postponing the upgrade of our water treatment plants, and this allowed the cryptosporidium outbreak to happen. Now, you need to upgrade these plants with money you don't have. Don't count on the central government to help. They already don't have money to pay for the aftermath of Cyclone Gabrielle, let alone what this El Niño summer is going to bring. Again, this will not bankrupt the council nor the community paying the rates, but it will add up until the next problem. Talking about the climate crisis is not enough anymore. Only actions that immediately reduce our emissions can improve our future outlook. This council declared a climate and ecological emergency 4 years ago. And even if we just read in the Wanaka app about some of the progress you've made and about the new climate website coming, we are not acting as if in an emergency. With the airport's emissions increasing, we're not on track towards the only measure of success or failure, which is to at least halve our emissions by 2030. The laws of physics do not give a green sticker for participation. They dictate the goals to reach, and at the moment, we're not on track to reach these goals. Also, with these last elections, we have probably created a government that has already announced it will roll back every small progress achieved so far to decarbonize the country. This is proof one more time that no one will solve the climate crisis for you. If you don't make it a priority to decarbonize your life and our district, no one will do it for us. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hang on. Well done. Moving on, confirmation of agenda. I move that the agenda be confirmed without addition or alteration. Move, seconder. Thank you. All those in favour? Aye. Motion carried. Confirmation of minutes of meeting. Any amendments? There was one. Page 11.
It refers to the first paragraph, refers to the Citizens Advice Bureau. Should be Civic Administration Building.
What paragraph you're looking at there?
First paragraph on the page.
Sorry,
Top paragraph.
Jack's down. Oh, yeah. You feel that?
Is page 8, special announcement. I thought we were deleting the words that indicated the speculation on what caused his death, rather than the fact that he was the former deputy harbour master. You mentioned the thing.
That was the intention.
Yeah, they mentioned the thing about a crash, but we don't. I'm not sure what the cause of his death was, but then we were going to delete the bit about the crash, and not the fact that he was the former deputy harbour master.
So we'll just remove reference to the cause of death.
Yeah.
Yep. Right, any further comments, amendments? Right. I move that that the minutes of the public part of the ordinary meeting of the Queenstown Lakes District Council held on 31 August 2023 as amended be confirmed as a true and correct record. Seconder. Gavin, all those in favour?
Aye.
Those against? Motion carried. Item 1, page 19 of your council papers, annual report adoption. Are you doing, Stu? You?
Man. Thank you, report is read, but just a couple of comments and a correction to the recommendation. Obviously, this is a procedural item, but it's a pretty significant procedural item. This is one of council's key accountability documents, and it does its reach as across the organisation. It's not only the financial statements, but all the statements of service performance in terms of all our KPIs need to be obviously calculated and presented in a way that is accessible to our community. So all that work takes place from between June and October, so it's a pretty significant piece of work. Yeah, we're very pleased to be able to present it to you today.
Questions, councillors?
And also the correction to the recommendation. Part of the process for adopting the annual report is that the annual report and the audit report go to the Audit and Risk Committee. And there was no significant issues came out of that report. The recommendation suggests that the Audit and Risk Committee recommended it to council for adoption. That didn't happen because we didn't ask them to do that. So,
So just a full stop after local government 2002,
yes, please.
and the rest of the sentence gets removed.
Yeah, okay, you could have let them said no to get a meeting table. Anyway, that's right.
Yeah.
I had a quick brief talk to Gio just before the meeting. I just, you say it's a lot of work and all that sort of thing, and I understand it's not actually a statute, it's procedural requirement. Statute, and it's a very good report, but just wondering, do you get much feedback or people reading it and talking to you about it?
The auditors read it.
Maybe.
Yeah, well, we talk months of work, and we don't. And I also talked to Sarah about maybe you should get down on bullet points.
The media certainly read it, and we do have obviously some parts of our community access the summary because we have to prepare a summary of the report, which cuts down a lot of the, well, about half of the content. A lot of what's in there is actually required under the legislation.
Yeah, don't get me wrong. I think it's a pretty useful report.
That's good feedback. I mean, we now have a new team who have accountability for pulling this report together. So take that on board. I think they are always looking to improve anything that we do in this space. So that's good feedback. Can't argue with it. It's a very lengthy report, but as Stuart says, we do have to tick a number of boxes here.
Yeah.
There is a summary.
Yeah, that's right. Well, that's right. But like a lot of things, it's after a while, the first couple of pages you start glazing over, and you want to get rid of this stuff. So.
That hurts.
It's cutting. It's cutting.
That's very good stuff. Okay, I'll back off then.
Any further questions, councillors?
Just one quick one. So paragraph 7 says the audit process will have been substantially completed. I see the audit is on appended to the report. It notes that only minor changes would be expected. Were there any changes that came out from the audit?
From between the Audit and Risk Committee and today,
Well, from the audit process.
not substantial changes. There was an addition of in the audit opinion that's at the back of the document is unqualified, which is what we aim for. And there are a couple of emphasis of matter paragraphs where they draw the reader's attention to a couple of items. They are both sector-wide items. They're not items that are particular to Queenstown. So one is the tree orders reform, and the other is the measurement of emissions and the uncertainty around that process. So other than that, there weren't any significant changes.
Okay. just want to pick up on what Lyle mentioned about many months of work. So I just want to thank your team, the finance guys and the corporate team as well to put this all together. So thanks very much. Yeah. So I'll open recommendations before you, councillors. Do I have a mover? Matt, seconder. Thank you, Cody. All those in favour? Oh, yeah, all right. All those against? Brilliant, motion carried.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thanks,
I think it's signed. Yeah, it was there. Oh, yeah. Right. Anyway, we've just got to sign the reports. Item 2, request to update other officer delegations under the Resource Management Act 1991, page 24. Yeah.
Good afternoon, Mayor and councillors. I think I have to confess, this might be my first council.
I was going to say, I don't recall you coming to council very often here.
No, I normally just liaise with all the lovely planning and strategy.
Oh, well, you get a greater and broader aspect of the governance team now. We're a more friendly bunch when it's more expanded.
Oh, but it's pretty.
We're a very friendly bunch of planning and
Yeah,
strategy.
yeah,
I'm sure they are.
yeah.
Oh, I was coaching from the side. Call it composing, mate.
Yeah. Okay.
So thank you very much. I was just going to say, I appreciate that, and the planning and strategy councillors are very much aware of how, the planning world in New Zealand is. It becomes a bit complicated and a bit complex, and I appreciate that my report is probably a bit technical. But fundamentally, the key thing with what this is seeking is really just to align the delegations under the Resource Management Act for designations with the council in its hat as a requiring authority. And at the moment, they sit under the consent authority, which is my team, and it has created some confusion in the past. And one of those was when the Glenorchy water tank reservoirs were done a couple of years ago. There was the decision maker from my side and the consent authority made a recommendation when they should have been making a decision, and there was a whole lot of sort of confusion around it. And I guess the other thing is, critically, the reason why the Act sets up designations to be the requiring authority to be the decision maker is because it is all about critical public infrastructure, and the provisions are there because it recognises that, you know, sometimes it won't always be, you know, sometimes community infrastructure particularly is needed, and not everyone will necessarily like it. And while it goes through a process and there'll be a team from my end that are doing their normal regulatory independent sort of review of it, and there might be a decision maker as well making a recommendation. Fundamentally, it's good if the council with its requiring authority hat on actually reviews that decision and makes sure that it is actually fit for purpose in terms of its operational requirements. And sometimes there might be little tweaks to that because of critical operational reasons, etc. So these delegation changes really just align that process a lot better and are going to make it a lot clearer. And as part of doing this, while I'm fronting this today, it has certainly been done in collaboration with both property and infrastructure and parks and community services as well.
Thank you.
So I'm happy to respond to any questions.
Questions, councillors?
Just a really quick one. Page 34, numbers 168, they're all listed as A, isn't it? Should they all be 168A or should they be A, B, C, D, and E?
Sorry, 2 seconds. No, they are all, that's in the table. Yes, no, they are all, oh, sorry, 3 units there, they are all, what, section 168A. And each section of the RMA has a number of sub-clauses normally, or a whole lot of things in it. And in this instance, that section allows for all of those things. And so that's why, again, it's clearer to actually separate them out because different people there are different delegations for each part of it. Does that make sense?
Yeah, that's great, thanks.
I was just going to ask if you could just expand on the fact that we're acting both as like territorial authority and requiring authority, and is there any tension around that you see any problems or not?
So just through you, typically no. So from a consent authority or territorial authority point of view, how we have traditionally dealt with any perceived conflicts around us, essentially assessing and approving our own applications, is they will be typically put out to a consultant processing planner, and then also it will typically be one of our hearing commissioners who's on our appointed panel, who will either make a recommendation in this case in terms of it being either non-notified or going through a notified process. And to be fair, that's probably one of the reasons why we're also changing the delegations, because that has sit traditionally externally. They don't actually understand or have all of the nuances of how council might need to operate in its capital works, require an authority role. And so, and as I was saying, there may be some particular parts of a recommendation where they go, well, actually we won't accept that little bit because there's a real operational constraint, and that's really robust as well. So I think that process will still continue like that, and that helps us retain that or deal with that perceived conflict as such. Yeah.
So just to clarify that, so the independent commissioners will still remain under the new government delegation structure when you've got that attention to address, is that right? Or is that
No, not at all. So our intention would still be at this point to use external people to assist us processing any applications and also to have that decision making done. It's just that they will be making the communications back as opposed to making a decision, which will just assist council, to actually do what it needs to do in the public workspace. Yeah. There will, to be honest, there will be times when the applications are such that the mine are quite benign, that they can also potentially be dealt with in-house, and typically an outline plan process, which is not a decision, it's just an information process that is done all in-house, because it's not there's no risk around, it's just literally an information sharing process. So we do that, way up with that assessment as well.
Thank you.
Page 35, you're referring the thing to program director. Can you just educate me on who the program director is in our council?
Sure. So just through you, Mr. Mayor, I believe that is a role that sits under the property and infrastructure team, and I think that they are the program director of the capital works program. Now, the GM of property and infrastructure, I will rely on to correct me if I'm wrong.
Okay, thank you.
Further questions, councillors? Resolutions before you. Do I have a mover? Thank you, Esther. Seconder. Thank you, Barry. All those in favour? Aye. Those against? None. Motion carried. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Item
Hope you enjoyed your first full council.
Yeah. I've got a figure I can run at the end as well. So.
But wait, I'll be back.
Item 3, Targo Waste, page 38. Beth, Laura and Tony, welcome. Over to you.
Good afternoon, dear members. Like Fiona, this is also my first full council meeting. Don't know how I've got away with that for 4 years. I suppose we primarily deal with the infrastructure committee. We are here just to bring to you the report on the Otago waste assessment, hoping that the full report has been read, but we will just note that this has been workshopped with the infrastructure committee earlier this week, and one of the recommendations is likely to change. It's noted that we will have that there's a recommendation to have the chair and deputy chair of the infrastructure committee on the working group for the development of a new WMP. But it may be that, given the engaged community of Wanaka, that we have an elected member from Wanaka representing components. So either a third member to the working group, or the swap out of the chair or deputy chair for a Wanaka representation.
Right. Beautiful. In Wanaka, councillors.
Well, we discussed it at the at the infrastructure meeting, and because Councillor Tucker wasn't there, we nominated him. And he's all happy to represent Warwick working group. We, acknowledge we didn't want the working group to get too big, but we thought it was important as a spread of on this subject in particular. Yeah, that Warwick Council on.
Okay, Chair of Infrastructure, yeah, that's what we discussed. I mean, the working group is yet to be made up anyway, based on whatever happens with this decision today. So we're not, we know how many people it might need to be.
So you're happy for the 3 or the 2 of the 3 or?
I'm happy for it to be 3. Yeah.
I think, the purpose of the working group is to work as the plan is developed up. Provided input, I'm not sure how extensive that will be, but it's that political oversight as that plan's developed up, so it's likely to be intermittent. And so we did talk about having someone from Michael would be useful. I don't think 3's we can manage.
Okay, sounds good to me. Any questions?
Sorry, it's not a question, I just wanted to acknowledge the extensive work that's been put forward. And yeah, the information's been amazing, and also some of the workshops as well that we've had, so thank you.
Fantastic, thank you.
Thank you. Well,
Yeah, Mr. Chair, a lot of discussion at the working group, the work party about between renewing the current one or going for a new one, and we did acknowledge that I think there might be a bit more expense or cost in doing a new one, but a lot of the current one will roll into it, and so I just wondered if there's any question, any comment on that, of the extent of the differences between renewing or the new one, as you mentioned at the infrastructure working group.
So the recommendation is to adopt a new one to allow for inclusion of the new vision, objectives and goals of the New Zealand Waste Strategy that has just been released this year, and to also more widely encompass a larger scope of work. In terms of budget, under the current year's budgets, we have allocated costs to allow for the development of a draft WMP and the consultative attachments to that. Depending on the options that come out of that WMP, we may need to look at bringing budgets forward from 10-year plans, or that will need to be considered in the next review of the annual plan and 10-year plan process.
Okay, thank you.
Sorry, Kath, just a question to you or Laura, and just perhaps useful for the councillors to get some reflection on the work that's been done across Otago in terms of the collaboration that's going on. Because I know there's been this has been an issue on the mayoral forum for some time, sort of how we did it. Be useful if you could briefly comment with council on that.
Yeah, absolutely. So as part of the mayoral forum, it was decided that the waste assessment, which is a statutory requirement for all local TAs to undertake in advance of reviewing a WMP or developing a WMP, that there would be advantage in doing that regionally to identify potential collaboration opportunities. So to look at whether there was opportunities for joint infrastructure and development of resource recovery networks that could support all of our objectives. At this point in time, the waste assessment has been done regionally, which is great. And that's why it's also been done slightly earlier than the requirement, which is for us to have done and adopted this by March next year. And then in the future, there's the possibility that we would look to also align WMP development. So at this point in time, the waste assessment, which sets out all of those issues and looks at options, notes potential for collaboration. But at this point, each of those councils involved will look to develop their own local WMP, whilst also considering future opportunities for collaboration.
thanks. No further questions, councillors? Well, I'll move 1, 2, 3 and the amendment to 4, appoint chair and deputy chair of the infrastructure committee and councillor Tucker to participate in a working group to develop the new draft waste minimisation and management plan. Do I have a seconder? Thank you, Evan. All those in favour? Aye. All those against? Motion carried.
Thank you.
Yes.
Yes,
Where we go?
thank you. I would take the report as read and happy to take any questions on them.
Questions? Catch it up. No one wants to talk about risk and liability of the building.
So I was just not necessarily a question, but I appreciate the fact that QLDC strongly refutes MB's position. That the current and joint several liability system is the most equitable. So I think for any viewers watching this meeting, it's important to note that we're trying to advocate for central government and MB to do the right thing and not to keep putting the pressure on the ratepayer. And sorry, I wrote my notes a while ago. I always do this at full council meetings. What have I written here? And the investigation of the risk allocation that's been removed. Phase 3. Can you tell me about that? So. Don't worry if you can't, I can speak to you outside of them.
So what was that? Yeah,
I don't know because I did it from version 1 of the notes, all the page numbers have changed, sorry.
oh, okay.
That's okay, I can come back to you on that, it's not important for any decision making.
Oh, here we go.
So, yeah, really just thank you for putting such a strong submission together.
Yeah, I can actually remember that. I'm actually, it's one of those gifts that the former mayors left me on that committee.
Right.
To review building consents. And the last meeting we had, that was told to us by EB.
Yeah.
That's been removed. So it's a bit of a disappointment from our side. But obviously, still sitting on that committee, and I know there's a fair few of us that disagree with that. Actually. But we've got a new government, so we need to know.
Well, and the key points are that proportional liability is favoured and we just have to keep our fingers crossed.
Just on the new government, the GPS submission, we made a strong point there, we wanted out of it earlier, so we just wanted to have any feedback. I suppose you have anything back yet on what's the likely time frame, or what do we do in the meantime? With, you know, we've got a lot of activities underway right now based on the previous government's issue, I'll say, speed strategy and things like that. Do we continue or do we wait for another GPS? Sorry, it's most probably not relevant to our submission, but it's
No, I appreciate that. Nothing formally around timeframes. Informally, I get a sense that there's going to be some delay to the GPS and to the LTP. It's a piece of work that Michelle is undertaking for us across a number of areas to see on the change of government processes that are underway, processes that we're involved with, whether in fact we want to pause those, slow those down, whether there's no need to do anything different. So we're just looking at that at the moment.
Thank you.
No further questions? We have a mover. Thank you, Mel. Seconder. Thank you, Esther. All those in favour?
Aye.
Against? None. Motion carried. Chief Executive's report. Page 101.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I think 3 items for council in that report, and they're summarised in the recommendations made. The first one is effectively establishing the proxy for the mayor for the annual general meeting, which is coming up on the 7th of December. I think the agenda for that has already been circulated to councillors, so it's a very straightforward agenda. Just noting that there will actually be an amendment to that agenda depending on what council decides on item 6 in terms of formally appointing a further a replacement director. So that will be that'll effectively be our resolution that's going forward anyway. So there's that one. You'll see that the Wanaka Airport Liaison Committee has now met, and that committee chair, working with the committee, has recommended some minor amendments to that in terms of reference for that. So that's there for council to approve. And finally, you'll note that there's an exercise of delegated power, which has been actually actioned, but is required by statute to be reported to council for information. So we're reporting that through as well.
Questions?
Question, Mike, do you? I guess the report was written before this week, but we had an infrastructure committee meeting on Monday. Does that need to be included in this report or does it go in the next one?
We'll go in the next round of council meetings.
Thanks.
Just a simple question on the proxy. Do we know, when you talk about in the proxy, vote for us on our behalf at the annual general meeting of the company? You don't have to actually, don't you have to put the name of the company or you just, is that not necessarily?
Straight in the.
You mean in the actual notice?
Yeah, the one that you're going to sign.
Look, I mean,
No, sorry, it's just a little kick.
no. In fact, they would just tidy it up. We had. Constitution, yeah. It's the format that's in the constitution.
Oh, is it? Okay, well, that's good. That's why you might go and phone some other company for us.
I don't think it'll be worth much, but anyway. Resolutions before you, councillors, do I have a mover? Thank you, Barry. I'll second. You too. All those in favour?
Aye.
All those against? Motion carried. I move that we move into public excluded. Right here. Thank you, Barry. All those in favour?